Chapter 1 of Beetle Boy Part 2. They would be in a museum, lad, if anyone had listened to me, Uncle Max said, but no, they wouldn't hear of it. A junior archaeologist making such an important discovery, a mere boy, they said it was impossible, but they were wrong. Just because a person is young doesn't mean they don't have the curiosity, determination and grit to do what a grown-up can do, eh? Uncle Max sniffed. When they finally decide to find the thing, and they will, because I've told them where it is, old Nefertiti will be toothless, and these beauties will prove categorically that I was there first. He carefully poured the teeth into an envelope. The past always has a way of catching up with you, lad, even when you don't want it to. He folded down the flap and sealed it. It was one of my first Egyptian excavations, you see. I was fresh meat, newly qualified, and I didn't understand the rules of the game. Grown-up life can be awfully dull, Darkus. It's full of politics and compromise. Uncle Max rambled on about the trials and tribulations of being an archaeologist, and Darkus nodded or shook his head as they cleared, swept and dusted the room together. A brightly coloured Moroccan cloth was thrown over 4 boxes of books to make a table, and 3 empty containers were stacked one on top of the other to make shelves for clothes. Uncle Max climbed onto a stool and scrubbed the inside of the skylight with vinegar-soaked newspaper. As he reached up to open the window and clean the outside, Darkus saw something black sitting on the glass. A creature with 7 legs, or was it 6 legs, and a horn. "Wait!" Darkus called out, but Uncle Max pulled the window towards him, and the creature leapt into the air, zooming away. "What was that?" Darkus pointed, wanting to scramble up onto Uncle Max's chair and get a proper look. "What was what?" Uncle Max looked up, but whatever it was, the beast had gone. 6 legs meant an insect, didn't it? No animal had 7. Maybe it was a bat or a small bird, or 2, but bats didn't have horns, and even 2 birds only had 4 legs. It must have been an insect, but he'd never seen an insect that big before. "The sun is setting," Uncle Max said, his head out of the window. "It's not an Egyptian sunset, but I must admit the city has a beauty of its own." Darkus surveyed the tiny room. "Uncle Max?" "Yes, lad?" "Where am I going to sleep?" Uncle Max popped his head back into the room. Darkus threw his hands out. "I don't think a bed will fit in here. And I don't have a spare bed, even if one would fit," which it wouldn't. Uncle Max nodded in agreement. "I suppose I could sleep on the floor, or on the ceiling," said Uncle Max. "Right." Darkus scratched his head, unsure if Uncle Max was joking again. "In a hammock," Uncle Max said. "A hanging bed sort of a thing. Sailors and archaeologists use them all the time. They're very useful for avoiding the deadly sting of a fat-tailed scorpion. Not that there are any scorpions here, you understand. Well, not ones that are alive, at any rate. So, how does a hammock sound?" "Sounds good." "Excellent, because I have a spare one of those." Uncle Max went into the hall and returned with a blue bag. Inside was a sandy yellow stretch of canvas gathered around 2 large copper hoops. "I thought we could hang it up there." Uncle Max pointed to the roof space above the filing cabinets. Darkus nodded eagerly, and Uncle Max reached into the bag and pulled out 2 brass hooks and a mallet. "Run down to the living room, lad, and grab the sleeping bag. It's on the leather armchair, and bring up the cushion from the sofa." When Darkus came back upstairs, Uncle Max had hung the hammock. He eagerly clambered onto the cabinets and flopped into his new bed, which rocked him gently from side to side. Cocooned in the canvas, he was completely hidden. "I love it," he said, poking his head out. Uncle Max passed him the sleeping bag and pillow. "Not bad," he agreed, looking around with a satisfied smile. "Now then." He picked up Darkus's suitcase and placed it on top of the filing cabinets. "We should see about getting you some clothes." "I've got clothes." "Some new ones," Uncle Max smiled. "That jumper wouldn't look out of place on a tramp." "This is Dad's jumper," Darkus said quietly. "Oh." Uncle Max looked crestfallen. "Forgive me, Darkus, I'm an old fool." He cleared his throat. "Terribly insensitive of me." "Uncle Max," Darkus swallowed. He couldn't look his uncle in the eye. "Now that you're back, the police will have to start looking for Dad again, won't they?" Uncle Max nodded. "I have an appointment with Scotland Yard tomorrow." "Tell them," Darkus leant out of the hammock, "he wouldn't run away. He'd never leave me, not with Mum gone. Something must have happened to him in that vault, something bad." "Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to tell them." Uncle Max looked up with an apologetic grimace. "Darkus," he paused, "I'm truly sorry it took me so long to get back to you." He put his hat back on his head. "I feel terrible about it, and I will do my level best to find out what's happened to your father and bring him home. But if, as I suspect, the police aren't going to be very helpful, we may have to do a bit of investigating on our own, and that will require grit and determination from both of us. You can count on me," Darkus said earnestly. "I knew I could." Uncle Max smiled. "Dinner's at 7. He stepped out of the room and saluted. "And it'll be fish and chips." Darkus listened to his uncle go downstairs. Then he leant down and pulled his suitcase up onto his lap. Opening it, he swept his clothes aside and took out a framed photograph of his father. Looking down at Dad's sandy hair and smiling blue eyes, he felt his chest tighten and his stomach twist. He stroked the glass. He missed his dad so much it hurt like a stitch in his chest. Darcus lay back in the hammock and propped the picture on the pillow beside him. Gazing up through the skylight, he watched the first stars appear. Tracing the constellations his father had taught him to recognise, he wondered if somewhere under this night sky his father was looking up and thinking of him.